Okay. Hey everyone. So this is a bit of a spicy one. The VMware cost conundrum. And I've been on a lot of calls, a lot of discords, a lot of chats in regards to what's going on over at VMware, and let's just put it out there where I am and what skin in the game I have. I've been around the VMware ecosystem for 15 plus years. I'll get into a little bit more detail as to why I have an opinion on this, but equally it might not be the same opinion that you're seeing far and wide out there in the industry, in the community. I think the big question is out there: should I stay? Should I go? You can go and look at Reddit. You can go and look all over Twitter, social medias, and it's all negative towards Broadcom. Let's get into a little bit around that. I think either way, payment is inevitable, and that we're going to really uncover in this, hopefully. Um, I wanted to put a bit of an abstract together, but ultimately, what we're doing is we're going to talk about how the infrastructure, how the IT landscape has changed. That recent acquisition of VMware, that pot that's been stirred, the honey pot that's been stirred, and now the cat's out of the bag, and things are happening, and people are very vocal about this change, and people on some of the people really like change and they gravitate towards that, and some people will just want to sit in that comfy chair and they don't want to move. And I think there's a place for both, and there's a lot of like the in between as well. So what we're going to cover, a bit of an intro. Why am I talking about this? What do I have an opinion on? And that's very important. This is my opinion. This isn't anything to do with Veeam software that I work for. Obviously, we have a big, large amount of customers that are using VMware, but equally they're using cloud. They're using other hypervisors. So I don't really have any business gain in this. Is that yeah, we'll get into that. What is the cost conundrum? The skills, the training, the downtime, the migration, the ecosystem factor. It's not just a hypervisor that we're throwing out into the bath water, and then weighing things up, because ultimately there's going to be a lot of people do different things, and I think that's fine. That's what's helped us to innovate and move forward. Like, let's think about the days before VMware. What do we do? How do we approach that? So first of all, is why do I have a say in this? So yeah, just over 15 years, pre and post sales knowledge. So just on that, over on the other side of that side, you can see where I've been, what I've done, and very much in that help desk through to pre-sales at Veeam Software, and then more into the strategic side of where we go, what we do. Actually, most likely now is my focus is around cloud and cloud native, and we'll get into a bit as to why that's relevant, and why I'm seeing actually a lot of people in this ecosystem in the cloud native world get quite interested about this. Uh, I've been at Veeam for over 9 years, a massive ecosystem vendor of VMware. Lots of great integration that we have there and all of that good stuff. I've taken my VCP, I've held that for many years. And I've been a V expert, which is their community, their ambassador program for 11 years now. So I'm accepted into that group of people that blog, that share, that create content around VMware and that technology. However, I am trying to be as impartial as possible, because I think there's two things that we have to consider here, and one is around that cost conundrum. And let's be upfront and very candid about this. You're going to pay one way or the other. You're either going to be paying the new license subscription, which is ultimately everything you've got already. You own. You paid for that outright. Most likely, a perpetual license. You own that license, and then you choose to bolt on and pay for additional support. Fine. What the new model looks like, from what I've looked at, is it's going to be a moving forward an annual recurring revenue for Broadcom, but it's going to be a subscription based model, a Netflix model, if you will, that you're going to pay monthly for the support and for the use of the software, which is why that seems elevated. A very different cost model. We're not going to get into that. We're going to stick with the technology. Again, I mentioned up front about Reddit being a great place to go and hunt down these the bad stuff that's happening, or people's renewals. Are they validated? It's generally a pseudo name behind a comment. So Yeah, I always take Reddit with a pinch of salt, but you generally get a good view on the world and what's happening out there. Again, I don't want to stick up for VMware here. I just want to be realistic about what's potentially what's happening here. So you're looking for so you're either going to pay the premium or pay the new subscription model. Maybe you're going to do it for a year, see how it rolls out, see what the world looks like in a year's time. Maybe that's two. Maybe you got in at the right time. Perfect. And you've got that 2 year buffer. Maybe you renewed a couple of years ago. All of that good stuff. Or you're in that position. What seemingly is being said out there from a Reddit point of view around right. Our premium has gone up by 3 to 5%, or 5 times. Sorry, actually, I'm hearing 100, 200, 300% in license costs or costs going up. So, what options do we have out there? Do we look at alternative hypervisors? And that's not as simple either, right? In that vSphere, depending on how you procured that and what your infrastructure looks like, you might have bought, yeah, and we'll get into that anyway. But you might have bought specific hardware, HCI type solutions that run VMware. So you're potentially tied into that. Or you rolled your own, you've got HP servers, Dell servers, and you did the installation. Are you looking at public cloud? We can run virtual machines up there with a little bit of the admin overhead away from what we currently do. Yeah, I'm going to say it. VMs on Kubernetes. I'm a big fan, proponent of this world, and I'm going to touch on this in a little bit more detail as well. Are we going to run VMs on KubeVirt or OpenShift virtualization or Harvester? Again, might be something that if you've got the skill set, that might be an absolute offer. I've even seen on that same Reddit post that I grabbed some of those answers from, is people are moving back to physical. Can you believe that? 20 years ago, if that had been said to me, my head would have blown up. So yeah, 4 type options. Kind of, there might be others. Let me know like what you think there as well. But I think they're generally going to be the alternatives that you're looking at. Okay, when it comes to those alternatives, are you looking at things like Hyper-V, Proxmox, Nutanix, Red Hat virtualization, which also goes end of life in maybe a year or maybe even next summer? KVM based hypervisors, there's too many to list on here. Scale, Verge, blah blah blah. Are we looking at the public cloud? I have only put the 3 big public clouds here: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. But like, there's nothing to stop you running virtual machines in Civo, DigitalOcean. Yeah, you know the ones I mean. And then you've got the VMs on Kubernetes. So I mentioned 3. I mentioned one project called KubeVirt. KubeVirt runs on vanilla Kubernetes. I'm actually running KubeVirt on my Talus cluster. Talus is a Kubernetes distribution. All good. Or do I need more support around things like Red Hat OpenShift virtualization, OCPV, or OpenShift Virt, or SUSE as another distribution? They have Harvester. And then there's that weird and wonderful option of going back to physical. I cannot see, if you've got 1,000 VMs today and you've kind of split them out into a service per VM or an application per VM, I can't see you going back into that consolidation of physical. There are still physical servers out there, 100%. Financials have mainframes coming out their ears still. It's a thing, but I can't see anyone really going back to that. Maybe. Okay, so what are my options to kind of drill down onto this? So what does your current hardware look like? So one of the things I mentioned is, well, if you've bought a hyperconverged system that has vSphere on, what am I tied to? What can I run on top of that? Can I just rip and replace? Was that Nutanix hardware, or was it a HCI from Nutanix that was running VMware? Now I want to go to Acropolis with AHV from a hypervisor point of view, or was it Hyper-V? Did you roll your own? Like, what does that landscape look like? Because it's all well and good saying I want to move, right? Okay, so what does that capex actually look like? How much is that going to cost me to lift and shift and move? Do I have to go out and buy new storage, compute, and networking to make that happen? In some cases, that is going to be a case. So, does the hypervisor actually work on the kit that you already have and that you've procured? Do you consider the cloud a target? Is an AWS EC2 instance a starting point? But let's remember that VMs in the cloud should not be the final destination. Like, in terms of, if you're looking at the cloud just to lift and shift virtual machines from A to B, that's probably going to backfire and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. Um, there's a continuation, there's a refactor and a re-architecture transformation that you need to go through on that front as well. And then again, I'm going to touch on it again. The other option is around virtual machines on Kubernetes. What does that look like? It's maturing. Is it really there? Um, Love to know your comments on that. I feel like I'm maybe in a bit of a bubble and a bit of a fanboy around that. So maybe I'm jaded. Maybe I'm a thought leader on that front. Okay, so if you choose the VMware pill, and let's just be real, and this is exactly the reason for this talk, is not all virtualization technology is created equal. Um, so we have to be mindful of that. Again, there's lots of different scenarios that each one of us are going to have to consider as we start to think about that, either in our enterprise day to day, or even in our home lab. We're making this same decision. People that I've seen for the last 15 years running VMware in their home lab, ripping it out, putting Proxmox in. I'm not saying that enterprises should do that, but are they? Let me know on that front as well. So, however, if you choose the other pill, what does that mean? So, okay, you chose VMware, you're going to pay a bit more of a premium for potentially an ecosystem that we'll get into that has worked. It means I don't have to stump the cost somewhere else. Okay, before though, like, last chance, a lot of words in here, but ultimately, let's think about that VMware community for a while, and whether this has been jaded, whether this has been a little bit broken from the Broadcom acquisition or not, is that it still has a very large active community of fully skilled vSphere admins. That VCP is just one of the things. I'm going to touch on the skills. Equally about simplicity. It wasn't simple. I was billed out for $1,500 a day to install vSphere environments or VMware ESX environments 15 years ago. Um, and we've only progressed to where we are with vSphere 8 update 3 current release, is that I actually think my mum could install that today. So do we need to be that skilled? Do we need to know how to get into the command line and interact with that anymore? Probably not. But again, I'm not at the coal face. That might not be the case um, anymore. The functionality as well. If we're talking about hypervisors, great. If you're just using the very high level hypervisor tooling and functionality, then maybe Hyper-V is a great option. Maybe that works. If you're using surrounding products, maybe that becomes a bigger deal. But maybe, and this is my take, only my take, is was VMware too cheap? And the price increase should have happened before. Like, if we think about Broadcom didn't just come along and go, yeah, I like the look of that VMware, I'm just going to buy it. They didn't just walk into the playground and go, that's the one I want. VMware pitched to them, this is what our market share looks like, the biggest market share of any hypervisor out there. And this is the opportunity that we have. And you've seen whole teams, whole products within that ecosystem within VMware get thrown out the back of the lorry because they're not making any money. VDI, SRM happened last week. Like, there's lots happening, and again, if you work at VMware and you know more about that and you have more insight into what's happening from a VMware Horizon or VDI point of view, what's happening there, what's happening from an SRM perspective, let me know. Like, I'm willing to be educated on that. But okay, maybe you're in between. Maybe you didn't know what you wanted. That was the last chance. So now we're on to, okay, so you've chosen the VMware route, you're sticking with it, great. But or you're on the fence and you're thinking about, how do I go from VMware to something else? Let's be clear here. The skills and the training, but equally, are a hidden cost. Whether that is man time or people time to understand a new hypervisor and have that efficiency and that advanced capability of being able to manage this brand new environment. I mean, maybe you've got people that just will, but I expect there's a lot of people out there. I'm a VCP. I only do VMware, and I'm only going to do VMware. And we know that then people could probably go somewhere else, maybe, or do they have to reskill? So there's an element to that cost as well in here. Again, large community of fully skilled vSphere admins. That simplicity, it just works today. I'm just going to keep it that way. I keep mentioning that large community of fully skilled vSphere admins. Now, if I go back and look at, so I've seen two different numbers here. One is I've seen that VCP, so VMware certified professionals, 200,000 globally. Fair enough, that might be the case. If you go and look at 2022 data of that, it looks like there's only around 40,000. So maybe it's not as large of a skilled community of vSphere admins. Now that doesn't mean I let my VCP lapse years ago. I don't need that anymore. But maybe that large community of fully skilled vSphere admins, they didn't report on that in 2023, or they haven't done yet. Okay, so to get you from A to B, you've got to think about that. Like, one, you're going to need the skills to be able to do that. And then secondly, you're going to have an element of downtime. I'm not familiar of any CDP continuous movement of data that will allow you to go from VMware to something else. Now, there's migration tools like we had, the P2V, physical to virtual, but ultimately, that migration is going to take some time, and it's going to cause some sort of downtime to the application, to the servers, to the infrastructure, to the environment. It's going to be different formats. There is, so under the hood within VMware, we use VMX's configuration file, we use VMDKs. Generally speaking, if you're going to KVM based hypervisors, if you're going to Hyper-V, you're going to be looking at other disk types, whether it be like QCal, whether it be VHDs. There's no just, oh, let's put that in there. There are conversion tools, there are migration tools, but you are going to have to shut one down for a time whilst you get that up and running somewhere else. The other thing, and this is close to my heart, is okay, that's great. We've been using VMware and Veeam to do our backups. Okay, where does that limit the choice of where we go? Or do I have to also go and consider a new backup vendor, or name another vendor in there that is tightly integrated into the vSphere ecosystem? And don't get me wrong, like from a Veeam perspective, just my Veeam hat on, like we support any platform. It started with VMware. That doesn't mean that was just the start, right? We've got VMware, Hyper-V, Proxmox, Red Hat virtualization. We have Oracle Linux KVM. We have physical Windows and Linux. We have public cloud. We have Azure virtual machines. We have the ability to protect PaaS in there as well. AWS EC2 and blah, blah, blah. And same as Google. And then our agents actually work on other hypervisors. So is that too much of an issue? But I'm not just talking about the backup vendor specifically here. I'm talking about, okay, what else? Security, observability, monitoring, all of that good stuff. Do I need to change that as part of this lift and shift? And how much is that going to cost? How much do I have to retrain my backup admins at that point because I have to change my uh, my backup software or my security software? The ecosystem factor. Now, this is just a very, very small snapshot of the ecosystem partners that VMware have. I actually couldn't find a conclusive like image that would allow us to show. So the one on the I guess this side, the one closest to my head at the moment, is just a snippet of those companies, that ecosystem, Veeam being one of them, but other backup vendors being in there as well, other database vendors, other hardware vendors, etc. And then the other big thing is VMware is not just a hypervisor. VMware has surrounding products and things within their own ecosystem. It's not just about VM. So I think that's another thing that we have to configure. And then finally is around weighing things up. So we're going to pay one way or the other. We're either going to pay for that VMware tax and that new subscription model, and that might be for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I would argue that we should continuously be evaluating our stack, our tech stack, depending on what happens within the industry. But also know that just by saying I'm going to go to hypervisor B, there is going to be a cost associated to that, whether it is cold hard cash or whether it is going to be time and skills and people. So whether that be migration time and cost, whether that be things like missing features, again, like I mentioned about if I'm only lifting and shifting, if I'm only using a hypervisor, if I'm only using VMware vSphere for a bit of high availability between multiple hosts, I only have 10, 100, 1,000 VMs across my cluster. I just use maybe a simplified vSwitch for my networking, and I use some pure storage, NetApp storage under the hood. Well, maybe I don't have any missing features. So if you take those crosses out of there and they're all ticks, then maybe that's an easier decision in the cost model. And if you've got a team that don't need to be skilled on that new hypervisor, or maybe you're running a hypervisor like that already. Maybe, like I would say, if you know VMware, you probably know Hyper-V, and if you're only using it that way, then you're probably going to be okay with the majority of that. I think these are just considerations that I'm trying to air and bring to the fold. But I think they're important things as well. So, and then finally, like whatever you do, there is always a way back. Like if you say "see you later, VMware," and then 90 days later you go, "Actually, we really missed this, this, and this." Guess what? They're going to let you back in, and they don't punish. Oh, I can't imagine them going to punish you that way. But ultimately, the key takeaway here is that, and I'm trying to be as impartial as possible. I just don't like the Broadcom, whether it be the community on Reddit and other areas, they're not helping. Oh well, they're not. They're speaking their mind and spreading their story, which is great. That's a community prerogative. Broadcom aren't doing a great job of communicating their prerogative or their mission. And I think there's the one key thing though is I often hear a lot of people saying I'm going, and that's great. But I was at Red Hat Summit the other week, and again, if there's anyone from Red Hat um, listening in, is that take a look at what that cost point looks like between VMware and the target environment. If that is Red Hat OpenShift, I'd expect that that's probably going to cost you around the same. But that might be, I mean, if Broadcom has left a bitter taste in your mouth and you don't want to work with them and be partners with them, then that's the door. You need to. That's a different discussion as well. But all the focus on this session was to one get off my chest is that I speak to a lot of customers and it's very easy to say, well, I've had it with this. We're not going to pay this uplift. And then when you start to get into, okay, where are you going? Okay, what does feature parity look like for XYZ vendor? Oh, they don't have that. So we need to then go out and find more. And the span of cost starts to get spread across. Now, if this is lighting the fuse to push people towards cloud and more cloud native, I'm all in. But it has to be the right reason, and we're going to have everyone in between, like I mentioned. I think the final thing is that payment is inevitable. We're going to have to pay our ways, but what way is it going to be? Are you going to pay the VMware, or are you going to pay in other areas? And with that, hopefully it was useful. Let me know your comments on this. I think it's a bit of a spicy topic. Still is, still will be. I think the whole of 2024, this will be a topic. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. I don't think any answer is the wrong answer. Different companies have different requirements. I think different companies will get better deals. If you're a logo that they want to keep, your number might not look as bad. But yeah, with that, let me know, and I'll speak to you all soon. Awesome. Cheers.